She kissed my cheek like I was already family, but something in her smile told me I wouldn't survive hers. I remember the way her perfume clung to my skin even after she let go. Sweet ticks, overwhelming, like roses pressed too hard into paper. I told myself to breathe, to relax, to stop overthinking, but I felt it. That tiny jolt in my chest, that first warning, the one we always talk ourselves out of. Her name was Clarissa, my fiancé's mother, and the moment she opened that tall, glossy front door, I felt small. Not because she made me feel that way, no, not yet, but because her world didn't have room for someone like me. Not really, not unless I was willing to fold myself into something more palatable. "You're even prettier than I imagined," she said, lips red like a warning flare, eyes scanning every inch of me. "No wonder Daniel's so taken." I smiled. I said thank you. I stepped inside their perfect house with its perfect staircase and its perfect silver-framed photos of a life I hadn't lived in, not even once. And deep down I started to wonder if I ever would. Daniel squeezed my hand, his way of saying ignore her. Or maybe it was "you're doing great." Either way, it didn't reach his eyes. He loved me. I know he did, but love, I've learned, doesn't always grow roots deep enough to survive someone like Clarissa. The dinner table looked like something out of a magazine: white roses, tall candles, everything symmetrical. I tried not to feel like a guest at my own wedding rehearsal. I tried not to hear her pause when I said my family didn't own much, that we were close, but not Ski and Aspen close. That my father died when I was 16 and my mom raised me between two jobs and night school. "Oh," Clarissa said, dabbing at her lipstick with the corner of her napkin, "well, you must be very resilient." It was a compliment with a knife tucked inside. I laughed softly. She taught me well. Clarissa smiled again. Wider, colder. "Let's just hope that is enough." I looked at Daniel. He looked at his plate. And something inside me started to ache in a way I didn't understand yet. Conversation floated around me after that. Vacation homes, stock options, the family's annual fundraiser at some historical estate I couldn't pronounce. I nodded. I asked polite questions. I folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. Then came dessert. She poured the wine herself, a Cabernet that probably cost more than my college tuition. As she handed me the glass, she tilted her head and said, "You know, I never thought Daniel would settle down so quickly." I smiled. "We've been together for 4 years." "Oh, I know. But serious so fast. You're just so—" She paused, swirling her wine. "Different." The word hung in the air like smoke. Different. Different from who? Different from what? I stared at her. That smile again. That perfect, polished, practiced smile. The one that said, "I see you and I plan to erase you slowly." And suddenly I couldn't breathe. I excused myself and went to the guest bathroom down the hall. Locked the door. Stared at myself in the mirror. My lipstick had faded. My earrings looked cheap under their chandelier lighting. I rubbed my chest, right where the ache was turning into something sharper. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I looked myself in the eye and whispered, "Don't let her break you." But I already knew. She didn't have to break me. She just had to make him believe I wasn't worth protecting. I went back out. Smiled. Sat down. Finished the wine. I told myself it was just one dinner. Just one evening. That, once we were married, things would change. That Daniel would see through her. That he'd choose me. But deep inside, something already knew the truth. He'd been raised to listen to that voice. The one that smiled with red lips and said, "She's not one of us." He'd been trained to nod, even while he said he disagreed. And I had walked right into the lion's den, thinking love was enough. We left that night, and he said, "She liked you." And I said she smiled at me. And neither of us said what we really meant. He didn't ask me how I felt. And I didn't tell him I felt like I'd just been measured, judged, and quietly sentenced. We drove home in silence, his fingers on the steering wheel, my heart in my throat. I looked out the window and saw nothing but black sky. No stars, no moon, and in that Darkness, I made a silent vow. If I ever became part of that family, it wouldn't be by invitation. It would be by survival. And I don't think they realized. I don't smile when I'm planning to lose. You know how sometimes you hear something and wish you could shove it back into the air. Pretend it never touched your ears. Yeah, I heard it, and it changed everything. It was a Thursday, late afternoon. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you nervous, like the walls are waiting to say something. I had come back early to surprise Daniel. He didn't know I had canceled my meeting. I thought we'd go out for dinner, maybe talk about our honeymoon again. Something sweet, something normal. But when I stepped inside, I heard her voice first. Clarissa, that clipped, glass-cut voice of his mother, echoing from the study. I stopped in the hallway. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I wasn't. But the door wasn't closed all the way. And my name? It floated through the crack like it had been waiting for me to catch it. She's not right for this family, Daniel. You know that. Silence. I froze, my hand still on my bag strap, heart suddenly too loud. I should have walked away. I should have made some noise, cleared my throat, called out, "I'm home," but I didn't. I stood there, listening, because part of me had already known, and when something inside you knows, you don't turn away. You wait for proof. Daniel's voice came next, softer, hesitant. She's good to me, Mum. Good to you. Clarissa laughed. Being good isn't enough. She doesn't understand who we are. You'll end up carrying her for the rest of your life. She works. Oh, don't be naive, Daniel. Her background, her mannerisms, it's all wrong. She's sweet, I'll give you that. But she doesn't fit. She's the kind of woman who cries in the supermarket when her card declines, not someone who stands beside a Worthington at a gala. I swear I forgot how to blink. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I think I was too still to cry. I just kept staring at that polished wooden door, listening to my life get dissected like some charity case on a silver platter. Then Daniel, my fiancé, said the thing that gutted me. I know. I'm trying to figure out how to end it. That's when the floor tilted under me. I didn't drop my bag. I didn't gasp. I just disappeared inside myself for a second, like my body was still standing there, but my soul had stepped out and was watching me from the ceiling. I'm trying to figure out how to end it. Not if. How. There was no anger in his voice. No sadness. Just quiet, clean calculation. Clarissa exhaled, like she'd just unzipped a tight dress. You'll thank me one day. They clinked glasses. I turned and walked out the front door, still silent, still unseen. I got into my car, sat there, for a full 5 minutes, with the keys in my lap, engine off, hands cold. My first thought wasn't how could he? It was of course he did. And that was the part that broke me, because I had felt it, for months. The way he didn't look at me the same, the way he'd delay text, the way his eyes always searched mine, a little too long, like he was trying to remember why he'd fallen in the first place. I told myself it was stress, that weddings were hard, that Clarissa was hard, that love was supposed to feel a little uncertain sometimes. But no, he had already made his choice. I just wasn't meant to hear it. I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just drove with the windows down and the radio off, and that sentence replaying over and over in my head. I'm trying to figure out how to end it. The man I had loved for 4 years. The man I was supposed to marry in 6 weeks. The man who used to trace circles on my back when I had nightmares. He didn't even have the decency to be conflicted. Later that night, he texted me. "Where are you? Everything okay?" I stared at the screen and almost laughed. "Everything okay." I typed, "I just needed air, long day." And then I threw my phone in the back seat, because I wasn't ready to confront it. Not yet. I needed time, to grieve, to process, to let the truth settle in the pit of my stomach and stop burning. The thing is, once you hear something like that, you can't unhear it. It doesn't fade. It changes how you walk, how you talk, how you breathe in front of them after that. And in that silence, alone in my car, I made a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to break. I was going to listen. watch, learn, and when I left, it wouldn't be empty-handed. You can be sitting at a table with fine silverware, wearing the dress he said you looked beautiful in, and still feel like you were never invited. It was supposed to be a celebration, his father's birthday. The kind of family dinner where they pour too much wine, laugh too loud, and pretend the past didn't happen. I wore a navy dress because Clarissa once said it was a strong color. I thought maybe that meant she respected me. Maybe I was earning my place. God, I was so careful that night. I brought a bottle of wine I couldn't really afford, arranged my hair the way Daniel liked, and even remembered his sister's boyfriend's name, which changed almost monthly. I smiled. I complimented the roast. I laughed when they did, even when I didn't understand the joke, and for a while, it felt okay, until it didn't. It started with dessert. Lemon tart, homemade by Clarissa. She always made a show of it. Daniel's favorite, she said, placing the plate in front of him like it was a tradition carved into marble. He smiled politely, but I knew he liked chocolate more. He just never told her. Everyone was relaxed by then. The wine had softened their edges, the kind of moment where guards go down and truth slip out dressed as humor. And then her cousin Elaine, I think, tilted her glass toward me and said, "So, when's the big day? Or are we still pretending this one's permanent?" Laughter. Not from everyone, but enough to sting. Clarissa didn't laugh, but she smiled. That tight, smug smile she wore like jewelry. The kind that says I won't say it, but I agree. Daniel didn't speak, not a word. He didn't laugh, but he didn't defend me either. I just sat there, blinking like someone had turned the lights off inside me. "Excuse me," I finally said, my voice low. Elaine waved a hand. "Oh, darling, I'm just teasing. You're so sensitive. You'll fit right in." More laughter, more silence from Daniel. I looked at him. Really looked. And what I saw was worse than anything they'd said. I saw fear. Not of me, but of them. I saw a man who would rather let me burn in silence than risk his seat at the table. I smiled. Small, tight, kind of smile women give when we've been wounded in public but refuse to bleed. "Actually," I said, lifting my wine glass, "we haven't set a date yet. We've been busy. You know, building something real. Some of us don't rush into things just to please the crowd." Clarissa's eyes flicked toward me, sharp. Elaine laughed again. "Well, do let us know before the invites go out. We'll have to check our calendars." I nodded. "Of course. Wouldn't want to disrupt your social season." It was petty, but it was the only power I had in that moment. I excused myself and went to the powder room, though I didn't need to. I just needed to breathe somewhere that didn't smell like lemon zest and cold judgment. I closed the door and stared at myself in the mirror. My makeup was perfect. Lipstick unbothered, but my eyes, they looked different, like something behind them had cracked. I leaned over the sink and whispered, "You don't belong here." Not in defeat, in realization, because I had spent 2 years trying to become someone they'd never choose. Not really. I wasn't a daughter-in-law. I was a guest, a tolerated presence, the kind of woman they invited because it made Daniel happy for now, the kind of woman they expected to fade. And the worst part, I had convinced myself that being tolerated was better than being alone. When I returned to the table, Daniel looked up. "You okay?" I nodded. "Just needed a moment." He touched my hand. A light squeeze, the kind that meant, "Don't cause a scene." I smiled. Of course, the rest of dinner passed in a blur. Stories I'd heard before, laughter that didn't include me. Looks exchanged over my head like I wasn't even seated at the table. When we got in the car, he started the engine and said, "They didn't mean it." I turned to him. "But you did. When you said nothing." He didn't answer, just stared out the windshield like maybe the road would swallow him whole. I looked at the house one last time as we pulled away. The warm windows, the manicured hedges, the family inside that would never ever call me one of their own. And I realized something else. They hadn't excluded me. I had been excluding myself from myself, shrinking, editing, performing, but no more. He reached for my hand as we turned the corner. and I let him hold it. But I didn't hold back what I was about to say next. You can be surrounded by friends, laughter, and candlelight, and still feel the sharp edge of a lie sliding between your ribs. That night, I wore the red dress he said made me unforgettable. My hair curled just the way he liked it. I had even dabbed on the perfume he once said reminded him of spring. I wanted everything to be perfect, because it was his night, his promotion, his party, and I was proud of him. Or I was before everything went still. The ballroom was glowing. Champagne flutes sparkled. Laughter floated like bubbles. People toasted his name like it was a brand. And Daniel stood at the center of it all, tall, smiling, magnetic, the kind of man who looks like a leader even when he's just holding a drink. He caught my eye across the room, smiled, tilted his glass slightly, and I smiled back. But I hadn't seen her yet, not until I went to refresh my lipstick in the corner mirror and noticed them behind me, her hand resting lightly on his back, like it had been there before, like it belonged. She was laughing, whispering something in his ear. He didn't pull away. He didn't even flinch. I turned to face them fully, walked over like I hadn't seen anything, like my heart wasn't already pacing in my chest. "Hi," I said, calm, polite, my voice wrapped in silk. The woman turned, and for a second, just a second, she looked startled. Then her smile returned. "Oh, you must be her," she said sweetly. Her, not his fiancée, not even my name, just her. Daniel's face tensed, but not in defense. More like damage control. "This is Mia," he said. "She works in legal." "Legal," I repeated, letting the words settle like ash in my mouth. Mia extended her hand. "We've been working late on that merger." She smiled. "You're lucky. He talks about you all the time." I wanted to ask what he said, but I didn't want to know. Because betrayal doesn't scream. It's quiet. It clinks gently in champagne glasses and smirks behind toasts. Dinner followed. A long table covered in white linen and delicate lies. Daniel sat next to me. Mia sat across. Clarissa, his mother, polished as ever, was at the head, watching everything like it was a play she'd written. The cake arrived. 3 layers, gold leaf. "Congratulations," Daniel piped in cursive like a crown. He stood to make a toast, his voice full of charm, gratitude, success. People clapped, glasses clinked, flashbulbs sparkled, and then the hostess handed me the cake knife. "Would you do the honors?" she said with a wink. So I stood, held the silver handle in my hand, and right beneath it, taped gently to the underside, was another knife. A real one, not sharp, not bloody, but still undeniably, unmistakably there. Just a small folded blade. I froze. Everyone was laughing, talking, distracted, except Mia. She was watching me. And Clarissa, her eyes flicked down just once before she sipped her wine. I looked at Daniel. He was smiling at someone across the room, someone who wasn't me. My fingers tightened on the handle. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. A joke, a bizarre accident. But it wasn't. It was a message. From her, maybe, or both of them, or the whole room. "You don't belong here. You're just decoration, a placeholder, something pretty to stand beside his success." I cut the cake anyway, smoothly, carefully, pretending the blade didn't exist. The slice landed on the plate with a soft thud. People clapped again, but I couldn't hear them anymore. After dessert, I excused myself and walked to the coat room. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. Not anymore. From clarity. Because it hit me then how many things I had let slide. The quiet distance. The delayed replies. The business trips. The way Clarissa never once used the word family when talking about me. I thought I could win them over. But you can't win a game when the rules were made to break you. Daniel came in 5 minutes later. "Hey, everything okay?" I turned, slow, looked at him like I was seeing him for the first time. I held up the folded knife. He blinked. "Where did you—" "It was under the cake knife." His silence told me everything. He didn't ask who. He didn't act surprised. He just said, I didn't know, I swear. And in that moment, I realized he hadn't protected me because deep down, he didn't think I needed protecting. Or maybe worse, he didn't think I was worth it. I slipped the knife into my clutch. "You're not going to say anything?" he asked. I smiled gently. "Oh, I'll say something. But not tonight, because I didn't want them to see the storm coming. I wanted them to hear it crack open the sky. Some wounds don't leave bruises, they just echo inside your chest when you breathe." I remember the sound the hotel door made when it shut behind me. Soft. Final. I stood there, for a moment, with my coat still on, heels still clicking even after I'd stopped walking. Like my body hadn't caught up to the part of me that had already collapsed. Daniel had texted me 5 minutes before the dinner reservation, running late. Go ahead without me? I was already outside the restaurant when it came through. I should have known. I think I did know. That message wasn't a surprise. It was a habit, repeated and reworded and dressed up like consideration. But I nodded to myself, turned and hailed a cab. Alone. The hotel lobby was gold-lit and expensive. People smiled like they meant it. No one could see that I was unraveling beneath my coat. No one ever does. The thing about silent heartbreak, it's polite. It doesn't ruin dinner. It doesn't make a scene. It waits until you're alone and then it shreds you with every unsaid word. I ordered room service. I couldn't eat, and poured wine I didn't even taste. Sat at the edge of the bed with the tray on my lap, like I was trying to pretend I had an appetite for something other than answers. And then, like instinct, I walked to the bathroom. That's where it always happens, doesn't it? The crying. Hotel bathrooms are designed to hide it. The fan hums just loud enough, the towels are white and thick and disposable. The mirror doesn't judge, it just reflects the parts you try to rearrange into something stronger. I didn't sob. The thing. I never sob. I bled, but quietly. Tears slipped without sound. My face didn't twist. My chest didn't heave. I just let it happen like rain sliding down a window, because you learn. After a while, you learn. You learn how to sit on cold tile in an overpriced room, mascara under your chin, and still check the clock like time's not breaking you in half. You learn how to silence your phone so you don't have to read the apology you know is coming, the kind that says sorry without ever saying wrong. You learn how to smile the next morning like last night didn't bury you a little deeper, and I did. I wiped my face. I rinsed my eyes. I stared in that mirror until I could pull myself back into place. Then I walked back into the bedroom and laid down on top of the duvet, still fully dressed. I stared at the ceiling and wondered how many other women had done this exact thing, waited for a man who wasn't late just elsewhere. I closed my eyes, let the silence speak, and it did. It said, "He's not afraid to lose you. He's betting you won't leave." The thought cracked something in me. Not anger, not even sadness, just emptiness, like I'd been holding on to a version of him that only existed when we were alone. In public, he was always slightly out of reach, slightly distracted, slightly ashamed, maybe. But in hotel rooms, I was undeniable, until I wasn't. My phone buzzed sometime after midnight. Sorry, work ran late. Got tied up. No punctuation, no question mark, no miss you. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, and I could have replied, could have sent something soft, something understanding, something that let him come back to me without consequence. But I didn't. I locked the phone and set it face down on the nightstand. I needed a different kind of silence now, one I chose. I laid there for another hour, maybe 2, just breathing, just thinking, and somewhere between 2 a.m. and dawn, I decided something quietly. The next time he told me to wait, I wouldn't. She didn't just take my name off a piece of paper. She erased me like I'd never mattered. It was the lawyer who told me. He didn't look me in the eyes when he said it, just shuffled the pages, cleared his throat, and said, "There's been a revision." His tone was careful, like he already knew what this would do to me. I sat in that stiff leather chair, heart crawling up my throat, trying to piece together what he meant. What kind of revision? He hesitated, then passed the document across the desk with quiet hands. I scanned the lines I had seen before. The same estate name, the same trust title. But my name, gone, just gone. Not reduced, not minimized, gone. I felt my stomach drop, not like a crash, more like a slow, sinking weight. The kind that tells you this isn't a bad dream. It's the truth, unraveling in your lap. My voice was barely there. When? He tapped the date at the top. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I was still bringing her soup when she said her arthritis was flaring. I was still smiling through her cold critiques, still trying to belong to a family that made me feel like furniture. 3 weeks ago, I was still calling her mom. Now, she'd cut me out of the story like I was never part of it to begin with. I see, I whispered. The lawyer shifted in his chair. I'm sorry. I don't know the details. He didn't need to, because I did. Clarissa never hid how she felt about me. From the day I walked into their lives, she treated me like a wrong turn. Daniel hadn't corrected yet. I was too modest, too quiet, too ordinary. I didn't come from legacy. I came from late nights, student loans, and a mother who raised me with grit and grace, but not much else. But Daniel loved me. Or at least, I thought he did. And so I stayed. I bent, I tried. God, I tried. And she smiled through it all, thin, polite, poisonous. The worst part. I believed I was winning her over. Every tea I poured, every compliment I faked, every time I bit my tongue, but I wasn't being welcomed. I was being tolerated. Until she no longer had a use for the illusion. The lawyer asked me if I wanted a copy. I shook my head. I didn't need proof of her betrayal folded in my purse. I left his office without saying another word. My legs moved, but my thoughts didn't. I walked 3 blocks before I realized I hadn't even zipped my coat. Cold wind bit at my skin. I didn't flinch. I ended up at the park, the same bench where Daniel first told me he loved me, back when love still sounded like a promise. I sat there and stared at nothing, and something inside me shifted, because this wasn't about money. It never was. It was about power, control, finality. She didn't just want me gone, she wanted me erased. No name, no trace. Like I was a stain on their story, she could scrub out with a signature. And that was the moment something broke and rebuilt in the same breath. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just decided I was done playing small to make other people feel big, done whispering in rooms I helped decorate, done proving my worth to people who'd already made up their minds. That night, Daniel came home late. Again, he tossed his keys on the counter, loosened his tie, and kissed my forehead like everything was fine. I didn't say a word. He poured himself a drink and said, "You're quiet tonight." I smiled, just a little. "Saw your mother today." He paused, the way someone pauses when they know a storm is gathering but hope it'll pass. "Oh?" She took me off the will. Class tapped the counter. "What? You knew?" He blinked. No. His voice didn't sound shocked. It sounded tired, like it was easier to accept than to fight. I looked at him, at the man who once held my hand like it was sacred, who once told me I was the home he never knew he needed, and I realized he wasn't my home anymore. He was just the hallway I had to walk through to find it. I stood there for a long time after he went upstairs, alone in the kitchen, still holding the quiet like it was something holy. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just stood in the center of everything I built and started planning how to take it back, not for revenge, for remembrance. Because if she thought I would disappear without a sound, she clearly didn't know me at all, and tomorrow I'd show her what a woman does when she'd been erased. She writes herself back in permanently. They thought I'd pack my bags, take the heartbreak, and vanish like a stain in the rain, but I didn't leave. I stayed, and I learned the language of survival with a smile on my face. The day after Daniel's mother took me off the will, I woke up before sunrise. The house was quiet. like it was holding its breath, unsure which version of me would walk down the stairs, the broken one, or the one who had finally seen the game for what it was. I looked in the mirror and saw someone new, not softer, sharper. They had written me out like I was a footnote, but footnotes can rewrite the whole damn story if you pay attention. I brewed coffee, sat in Daniel's favorite chair, and opened my laptop with the same grace Clarissa used when slicing lemon tart, controlled, clean, certain. I pulled up the files he thought I didn't understand. Legal structures, board voting rights, trust timelines. His family's empire wrapped in soft-stitched documents and unspoken rules was built like a fortress. But I'd been inside the walls long enough to know exactly where the cracks lived. See, what they didn't realize is, silence doesn't mean weakness. It means I was listening, and I had been, for years. At every family dinner, every boardroom call I accidentally overheard, every time they treated me like decoration, I took notes. So while they saw a woman slowly losing her place, what they were actually looking at was a queen in checkmate prep. And I knew where the silent shares were buried. I knew which cousins owed me favors. I knew which secretary was sleeping with which brother-in-law and what would happen if that information landed in the wrong hands. It's amazing what people reveal when they think you're not paying attention. Clarissa once told me, in front of Daniel, that grace is knowing when to leave quietly. I nodded and smiled, but inside I whispered, grace is knowing when to strike without raising your voice. The turning point came 2 weeks later. They were all at the estate for the quarterly family meeting. I wasn't invited, of course. Not officially. Clarissa said something like, "It's best to keep business and personal separate, dear." With that cold, pearled smile of hers, so I showed up anyway. Wearing white. Simple. Elegant. The color of innocence, which by then I had weaponized into armor. Daniel's face stiffened when he saw me step through the archway, but he didn't stop me. Because deep down he knew something had shifted. I wasn't asking permission anymore. Clarissa didn't greet me, just glanced, then whispered something to the man beside her. I walked straight to the head of the table, placed my folder down, and looked around at them, each one born into a seat they never earned. And I spoke, calm, clear, unapologetic. "Before you begin, I'd like to remind you that the trust still recognizes minority votes, including the unspoken 21% held by the absent shares in the Greenwick portfolio, which, as of last Thursday, are under my advisement." They blinked, shifted, fidgeted. Clarissa's hand froze mid-reach toward her teacup. Daniel looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't either. But I knew what I was doing, and they didn't, because they'd never had to know. They'd been protected, propped up, born into power. But me, I had built my strength in silence. In hotel bathrooms, in half smiles and full betrayals. "You can't just come in here," Clarissa started. I held up a hand. Not loud, not rude, just final. "You took me off the will, Clarissa," I said softly. So I made my own. There was no screaming. No chaos, just the sound of me flipping open a folder and placing contracts on the table like chess pieces. I wasn't asking for anything. I was declaring, because every empire needs a queen, and I had the crown now. After the meeting, Daniel followed me outside. His voice was tight. "What was that?" "That," I said, "was me becoming what you were too afraid to be without her permission." He stared at me. "You planned this." I looked at him for a long moment, not with anger, not even pain, just clarity. "They thought I was leaving," I said, "but I was rising, right under your silk-covered noses." He didn't say another word, and I didn't need him to, because for the first time in that entire relationship, I wasn't standing behind a man. I was standing in front of them all, and I wasn't asking to be let in anymore. I was already inside. I didn't cry when I found out. I locked the doors instead, not out of fear. Not to keep anything out, but to keep them in. The house was quiet that night. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that hums with secrets, that holds its breath. Every wall, every polished floorboard, every family portrait waiting. I stood in the foyer barefoot, holding the key in my palm. It felt heavier than usual. Or maybe I was just finally noticing the weight of what I'd been carrying for too long. He wasn't home yet. Neither was she. Funny how betrayal travels in pairs now. I slid the deadbolt into place. Click. Then turned and walked room to room, locking every window, every side door, every glass panel that looked elegant but was never meant to protect. It was our house. That's what he said when we first moved in. Our home. But he lied. It was always hers. His mother's. His family's. Their legacy, their rules, their marble counters and silent expectations. They just let me live in it. Until now it was mine, and I wanted them to feel that. Earlier that day I had found the bracelet, not in some hidden drawer, not tucked away in guilt on the nightstand. Her bracelet, the one I saw in photos from their charity gala months ago, the one she never took off. He didn't even bother to hide it. Or maybe he thought I wouldn't notice, wouldn't know what it meant. But I knew. It wasn't just infidelity, it was the ease of it. The comfort. Like betrayal had become their love language. I held that bracelet in my hand for a long time. Cold, heavy, gold links with a small sapphire charm that caught the light in the cruelest way. I didn't scream, didn't throw it. I simply placed it in a velvet box and left it on his pillow, gift-wrapped closure. I set the table next. For 3. Candles. Crystal glasses. Silverware she once criticized for being too modern. Everything placed perfectly. A meal he loved. One I cooked the first month we moved in, back when we still touched each other like we were both afraid to lose the moment. He used to say my lasagna was better than his mother's. She never forgave me for that. I poured the wine. I lit the candles. And then I waited. A door handle turned at exactly 7:42 p.m. Voices. Hers first, laughing softly. Then his, low, familiar. They stepped in together. She was in black, always the villain's favorite color, and he looked relaxed, like a man too sure. He still held the upper hand, until they saw me, until they realized the lights were dimmed, the music was low, the food was hot, and the door was locked. "Hi," I said. Calm, warm, even. "Dinner's ready." They froze. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. "Please, you're both just in time." He cleared his throat. "What's going on?" I smiled. A toast. First. I lifted my glass and looked at them, the way you look at a storm you no longer fear. To truth, finally being served, hot and honest. He didn't raise his glass. Neither did she. She glanced at the door. "It's locked," I said. Her brows lifted. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Daniel took a step forward, voice tight. "What are you doing?" I looked at him. Really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see the man I fell in love with. I saw a coward in expensive shoes, a boy in a man's suit, hiding behind his mother's approval and another woman's perfume. "What I should have done a long time ago," I said. I turned toward her. "You can wipe that look off your face. You always thought I'd fall apart, didn't you, Gist? That I'd cry, beg, disappear." She didn't speak. She didn't have to, because every inch of her face said we didn't think you had it in you. I walked to the door, pressed my hand against the wood. "This house isn't yours anymore," I said. "It's not a stage for your lies. It's mine, and I'm done being background noise." Silence. Their silence was my applause. He tried again. "You can't just lock us in." "I can," I said. And I did. Her voice was sharper now. "You've lost your mind." I turned slowly. "No, I found it. Piece by painful piece. While you laughed in hotel rooms and whispered through phone calls you thought I'd never hear." I stepped closer, until we were face to face. Until she could see the quiet fire behind my calm. "Tonight, you're going to sit and listen and watch everything fall out of your mouths the way it should have from the beginning." I picked up the wine glass. Because the performance is over. I took a slow sip, and I'm the one holding the final scene. He said the words I'd been waiting for, but they didn't sound like him. They sounded like something I would say if I didn't care who I shattered. It happened at Sunday brunch. Her favorite. The one where we all pretend we like each other, where the eggs are too perfect and the compliments too forced. Clarissa wore pearls and a pale blue silk blouse, like she was headed to a photo shoot instead of a family table. Her smile was tight, her questions sharper than the cutlery. She asked me if I'd found a real job yet. I laughed. Lightly. I run a full marketing firm now. She tilted her head. Yes. Working from a laptop at cafes. That counts now. I sipped my mimosa and didn't blink. Actually, we just landed a 7-figure brand. I suppose it does. Daniel shifted in his seat beside me, eyes flicking from her to me. Uncomfortable. He never stood up to her. Not once. He'd defend me in private, sure, whisper how proud he was when we were alone. But out here, in her territory, he always sat down when she pushed. Until that day, until the moment she leaned in, her fork clinking gently against her plate, and said, "Well, I'm sure you're doing your best, dear. It's not your fault you didn't grow up with certain standards." The air went still, and that's when he did it. Daniel set his coffee cup down, carefully, then looked her dead in the eye. "Mom," he said, voice low but clear, "you need to stop insulting the woman I love." She blinked. The room blinked. Even I froze. Because it wasn't just the words, it was how he said them. There was steel in his voice. No hesitation. No boyish tone searching for approval. It wasn't a request. It was a boundary. She narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me? You heard me," he said. "You don't get to speak to her like that. Not anymore." I could tell she didn't recognize what was happening. Her lips parted like she was seeing her own son for the first time and didn't quite know what to make of him. "Daniel, this isn't you," she said. "She's turning you into someone you're not." And that's when it hit me. The truth came out of his mouth, but the monster behind it was mine. Because I had changed him. I had taken every cut she gave me and stitched it into armor for him to wear. I had fed him my silence, my resilience, my anger pressed into smiles. And slowly, without even meaning to, I had built a version of him that could finally stand up. To her, to them. But it came at a cost. He wasn't soft anymore. He wasn't sweet in that eager to please way that once made me feel safe. He was firm, distant, sharpened by the fire I handed him. Clarissa stared at him like he'd slapped her. Her voice cracked, just a little. "You're not being yourself." "I am," he said. For the first time in my life, and all I could do was sit there, watching the walls collapse around us. A part of me wanted to cheer, to cry, to grab his hand under the table and whisper, "Thank you." But another part of me, a deeper, colder part, wondered if he was doing this for me, or because he'd learned to speak like me. Because I taught him how to weaponize calm. She stood, shaking her head. "This is what happens when you let love make you weak." I stood too. "No," I said quietly. "This is what happens when you mistake control for love." She didn't reply. She just grabbed her bag and walked out, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. Silence fell. He stared at his plate. I stared at him. "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded. "I think so." But he didn't look at me. Not fully. Not with softness. There was something else there. Now, something hard, something born of every fight, every cold night, every whispered strategy I'd given him to survive her. And I couldn't help but wonder, had I built a man strong enough to leave her, or had I built one strong enough to leave me too? It didn't hurt when they erased my name. The pain came later when I watched the paper curl into flames and realized that fire was the only honest thing left in the room. The first time the will burned, it wasn't literal. It was in court, cold room. Fake smiles, suits that smelled like money and polished lies. I sat next to Daniel, fingers clasped tight in my lap, trying to breathe like I still mattered, like I still existed in the family I poured my soul into. The lawyer cleared his throat, opened the folder and read. My name wasn't there. Just gone. no explanation, no footnote, no grace. I turned to Daniel, waiting for the protest. The outrage, the what the hell mother that never came. He just looked ahead, jaw tight, silent. And that silence told me everything. It wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. Clarissa sat across from me, poised as ever, silk scarf around her neck, pearls tucked just beneath her collarbone. She didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She just stared at the wall behind me like I'd already faded from the picture. She made sure I was erased with dignity. The judge moved on. Terms were read. Transfers arranged. Legacy discussed like it was a list of assets instead of the life I thought I helped build. And I stayed quiet. I had no legal claim, no marriage license, no prenup, just years, just love, just loyalty. Turns out that doesn't count on paper. After court, Daniel followed me to the parking lot. "It's complicated," he said, voice low. "No," I said. "It's clear." He reached for my hand. I didn't let him take it. I didn't know she don't lie. He paused, swallowed. I didn't stop her. That was the first honest thing he said all week. I got in the car and drove. Nowhere, just away. For 3 days I stayed at a rental cabin by the lake. Alone. No calls. No plans. Just silence and the sound of my life, rewinding in slow motion. I went over every dinner I hosted, every family gift I picked out, every time I stood quietly beside Daniel while they made space for everyone but me. I remembered the night Clarissa told me, "Security is earned, darling, not assumed," and I'd smiled, because I thought I had earned it. But now I knew better. The second time the will burned, it was literal. Clarissa passed a week after the court hearing. Sudden stroke. No warning. Just gone. Daniel called me. I almost didn't answer. "She's gone," he said. I didn't speak. Didn't know what to say. Didn't even know what I felt. He asked if I'd come by the house to sort her things. It'd mean a lot. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted to see if anything in that house still belonged to me. So I went. The estate was exactly the same. Cold, perfect, timeless. I walked past the front door she once told me was too grand for my kind, into the study where she wrote her checks and final judgments. Daniel met me by the fireplace. He looked tired, older somehow. "She left something," he said, "in the safe." He handed me the key like he couldn't hold it anymore. I opened it. Inside an envelope. Handwritten. My name on the front. I opened it slowly, expecting nothing. Instead, there it was. The original will. Signed. Stamped. Filed. My name. Clear. Bold. Acknowledged. I blinked. Read it again. My hands started shaking. "She changed it," Daniel whispered. Weeks before the final copy, she told the attorney to destroy this one. Said it was a mistake, but she didn't destroy it, I said. "No." I looked down at the paper. My name, a place in the legacy. Not out of pity, but because at some point she must have known I earned it. She must have known I loved him. That I stayed. That I fought to be part of something that was built to exclude me. And yet she took it back. Because admitting I belonged would mean rewriting what she believed power looked like. I folded the will slowly, walked to the fireplace, stared at the flames. "Don't," Daniel said softly. I didn't look at him. "You already did it once," I said. "Let's finish it." He didn't stop me. I held the paper to the fire. The corner caught. Orange licked the edge. And I watched it go, piece by piece, first in court, then in fire. And somehow, in those ashes, I saw the truth. I never needed a will to prove I belonged. Because now, I wasn't asking to be written in. I was writing my own name into places they couldn't touch. Daniel stood beside me, quiet. But I didn't reach for him. Not anymore. He stared at the flames. "What happens now?" I turned toward him, finally meeting his eyes. "That depends," I said. "Did you keep anything of mine? Or just what she told you to?" And that, when he realized this time, He might be the one erased. He said I'm sorry like it would rewind time, like it hadn't already shattered. I heard it in the hallway, barely above a whisper, and for a second I almost believed it came from somewhere real, somewhere that still had love in it. But it didn't. It came from fear. The fear of losing me, not the grief of ever having hurt me. It was raining outside, one of those soft, steady rains that makes everything quieter, that hides the sound of pain if you let it. I stood by the window in my robe, clutching the edges like it was the only thing holding me together. He walked in behind me. I didn't turn around. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice thick. "You mean now?" Silence. After the lies. After the silence. After the months of watching me dim myself to keep his world from cracking. Now he wanted to talk. He stepped closer. I could hear it the way his feet hesitated. He was nervous. Good, because if I wasn't worth standing up for when they mocked me, doubted me, pushed me to the edge, then he didn't get to be brave now. "I messed up," he said. My laugh was soft. Not cruel, just exhausted. That's the understatement of the year. "I didn't know how to stop it," he added. "My mom, the pressure, the business." I turned then, finally, and for the first time I let him see what he'd done to me. "You didn't know how to stop it," I repeated, calm. "You had 1,000 chances. You could have chosen me every day, but you chose her silence, their comfort, your legacy. And now you're standing here like sorry as a spell." His eyes dropped. "I was scared." "I know," I said. "But you weren't scared for me. You were scared of losing what I made easier for you." His jaw tightened. "That's not true." I stepped forward. "Then what did you love? The woman who defended you at dinner parties? Who smiled when your mother said I was too ambitious, too plain, too new money? Or did you love that? I made you feel like a man when everything else in your life made you feel small." He didn't answer, because he couldn't, because he knew I was right. I looked back to the window. He followed me with his eyes, not his feet. "Please," he said, quieter now. "Can we just try again?" That's when I laughed, really laughed. The kind of laugh that tastes like the last breath before you leave. "You don't get to ask for a reset after the fire," I said. "You let it burn. You watched it happen. You let them torch my place in your world and told yourself you'd fix it later." "I was stupid," he whispered. "No, you were selfish." He looked at me, then like he finally saw the woman standing in front of him. Not the girlfriend, not the peacemaker, not the convenient shadow behind his light. Me, the woman who had stitched herself together in hotel bathrooms, who had swallowed humiliation with sparkling wine, who had smiled at his mother while bleeding internally. I shook my head slowly. Some apologies come wrapped in fear, not love. He flinched. "I'm not here to collect regrets, Daniel," I said. "I deliver them." And just like that, I turned and walked past him, down the hall, toward the bedroom that used to smell like warmth and now just smelled like leaving. I heard him say my name, but I didn't stop, because I already knew, this time, he would be the one crying behind a closed door. She told me I'd never be one of them, then smiled as if it was a mercy, not a warning. I nodded politely, while building a kingdom under her nose. It started at that dinner, the one where she leaned across the white linen tablecloth, her diamond bracelet catching the light like truth, and said, "You're sweet, but you don't fit here, darling." I smiled back. Good, she didn't get it then. None of them did. They thought I came to blend in, but I never wanted to match their tablecloths or their bloodline. I came to learn the map, to memorize the cracks in their polished walls, and then redraw the entire house in my name. At first I tried. I really did. I softened my voice. I laughed when I wanted to correct them. I wore pastel at brunch even though I felt like I was drowning in someone else's skin. I tried to be small enough for their rooms, but small doesn't survive where power is currency, and they never saw me as one of them. Not because I lacked anything, but because I carried something they never could fake: hunger. See, they were born into wealth, into cold silver spoons and legacy seating charts. I came from nothing, and I remembered every creaky floorboard, every bill that made my mother cry. I remembered what it was like to be outside the glass, pressing my face to the future. They didn't. They mistook comfort for strength, and I waited. Patiently, Clarissa, his mother, was the gatekeeper, the queen of tradition. She whispered behind crystal flutes, orchestrated deals over garden parties. People moved when she smiled. They bowed when she blinked. And she hated me, not openly. That would have made her look vulgar. No, she did it with grace, the kind of elegance that says, "You'll never be enough," wrapped in compliments about your resilience or determination. But she underestimated something. I didn't come to ask for a place at the table. I came to own the table. So I watched every board meeting I wasn't invited to. I read the minutes. Every foundation gala I was excluded from. I networked with the caterers, the assistants, the people they ignored. Information flows in the spaces powerful people leave empty. And I collected all of it. Daniel saw the shift before they did. He felt it when I stopped explaining myself. When I stopped asking for love that had terms and ceilings. We were already breaking by then. I think he knew it was coming. I still loved him. But love doesn't survive in a house that keeps locking you out. The real turning point came when Clarissa tried to box me out of the expansion deal. She wanted the family's name on everything but behind closed doors. She'd told the attorneys to write me out of the operating structure. Except she forgot one thing. I'd built the pitch deck from scratch. Late nights, countless revisions. I knew every number, every projection, and more importantly, I knew the investor she was trying to sideline because I had met him months before. At a gallery, by accident, I remembered his daughter's name, his favorite scotch, the artist whose work he collected. I had written his bio into my mind like a prayer, and when I showed up to his office, uninvited, unannounced, he looked at me and said, "Finally, someone who does the actual work." 3 weeks later, the deal went through, and I was the majority stakeholder. Clarissa's name was still on the building, but mine was on the deed. She cornered me after the signing, in that cold marble hallway, her voice sharp but hushed. "You think this makes you family?" she snapped. I stepped closer, calm, measured. "No," I said. "It makes you mine." She blinked. "This house, this legacy, this name, it doesn't belong to me. Not yet. But you, all of you belong to me now. Every secret, every weakness, every person you treated like a servant. I see them. I remember. I don't collect grudges, I invest them." She tried to speak, but I cut her off. "You told me I didn't fit in. You were right." I smiled. I was never meant to fit. I was meant to replace. And then I walked away. The irony, they still gather every year. Same table, same silver, same forced smiles, but they look at me differently now. Because the woman they once tried to trim down to size now signs their checks. And Daniel, he still watches me, like he's wondering when I stopped being the girl he loved and became the woman who owns the world he never had the courage to protect me from. But the truth? I didn't stop loving him. I just stopped loving the version of me that needed his permission. And now I don't belong to their family. They belong to me. And the only question left is, what do I do with them next?